The Danish Deception, part 11. Okay, so he tells me that his realtor has found a buyer for this apartment complex, and there's one caveat. So apparently it's a very wealthy family. He did not know who this wealthy family was, but this family, the way they draft up the contracts, whenever they have to buy a property for tax purposes, and there's like a certain cutoff for when they need to acquire a property, they have like their own contract drafted up that basically requires the buyer and the seller to put money into escrow, so that if the seller changes their mind of selling the house, they get liquidated damages. Basically, make sure the deal goes through. I have never experienced anything like this in my real estate career. Obviously, Denmark is a different country. I didn't really know how real estate worked there. So not only is it different rules and guidelines, but it's also, I've never worked with like a super ultra wealthy family before to understand that this might be a requirement or something added in their contracts. And so I remember being like, how much is it going to be? And he's like, oh, it's going to be like $120,000. I remember just like being like, well, we don't have this money. Like, there's no way we can make this work. And so he said, I'm going to be able to come up with a loan, get a loan from a bank. I've already called them. I can get a loan from them for like $100,000. So we're just going to be short another amount. And at this point, my accounts are dwindling. And because I was in this long distance relationship, I was not focused on doing real estate at all. Like, I had taken a full step back from real estate, but I did have a career where I was making well over 6 figures. So I still was like making a pretty steady income, but my savings had been dwindling down. So I didn't have a whole lot of money left. So I remember at this point, he's like, we should make this deal work. And I'm seeing this as a way to get out of our financial position. And let me just say, my ex, if he wasn't such a narcissistic psychopath, he'd be such a great actor, because the way he sold this stuff to me, like, it was insane. So I remember he said that he was going to take his watches to a store to see if he could get it sold within 24 hours. Obviously, that might be kind of difficult. And so at this point, he's like, how much money do you have? And I was like, I really don't have a whole lot of money to give you. So I remember I gave him like a small amount, maybe like 3,000, because I wanted to make sure I had enough money for like bills and miscellaneous. And I just wanted to have a little bit of cushion. And I was getting stressed out, but he ended up coming up with the money. He says the deal goes through and that it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he tells me what I think I'm going to do is switch my address from Denmark to the States, especially since I have been living in the States more, and I'll be able to save money on taxes. And at this point, I was like, is this tax evasion? He goes, this is absolutely not tax evasion, because I am spending more time in Dallas than I am in Denmark. And I said, okay, well, if you've done research and you feel certain about this, then I believe you. So the deal goes through. It says it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he said, we should take a trip to celebrate. And I'm like, we don't have any money. And he was like, well, we can just use your credit cards, because, you know, like, we'll be able to pay it off whenever the money hits. And this is probably one of the most like idiotic decisions I made. Y'all don't have to tell me this is stupid. I'm fully aware. But we ended up going to Portugal for a week, and we used my credit cards the majority of this trip. He had a little bit of money, because keep in mind, he is working as chief commercial officer for this tech company. And that was 100% real. And he was making about $400,000 a year. Again, 100% real. I, at certain times, have verified the money hitting his account from his company. So he's making money, even though we're having a lot of financial stress. He's still bringing in a steady income. I'm still bringing in a steady income. So he was able to pay a little bit of the trip, and I was able to pay a little bit of the trip. So we go to Portugal. We have the most spectacular week. I remember that was the week that I decided I want to get married in this country. I love it here. It's so beautiful. I was working still at this time, and with the time difference, I was basically working from like 5 to midnight. And there was one day while we were in Portugal that I was just complaining about working. I'm like, I'm so over this job and I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I was just complaining about it. And he just said, why don't you quit? And I remember looking at him like, what do you mean quit? And he said, well, we have this money coming in and I want you to be happy. I want you to do something that brings you joy, and real estate brings you joy. And I really hadn't been doing a whole lot of real estate that year. And so I told him, I said, well, it's going to be like kind of a transition. I'm not going to be making a lot of money at first. He said, well, we're going to have a cushion, and luckily I make money. I'm going to be able to afford all the bills, and you can just focus on building your business back up. And so I was like, are you sure? He said, yes. And let me tell you, everything about this decision, it felt right, but it also felt wrong. And let me tell you, I do not regret quitting my job. I regret the timing, because we were not in a great financial position, and I was making like $150,000 a year at this job. So it was a very steady, stable income. And I trusted him to be my provider, and that was stupid. And I have never relied on a man for anything in my entire life, and I will never do it again. Like, never in a million years. But, you know, you live and you learn. And I made the decision to put in my 2 weeks notice. And yes, I know that was idiotic. Y'all don't have to tell me. And so we go to Portugal, come back to Denmark, and we're in Denmark for maybe a day, and then we travel back to Dallas. And at this point, your girl is hurting financially, because now I'm accruing like a little bit of credit card debt. My savings is like nothing. And at this point, I'm fully trusting him, and I believe him when he says, we are going to overcome this circumstance very, very, very soon. And keep in mind, at this point, I have not caught this man in a single lie. And obviously, I gave out my trust way too easily, but in my mind, I was thinking, why should I question him when he's never given me a reason to? Which is crazy because I feel like he was giving me all the reasons with all these red flags. But we go back to Dallas, and I remember his sister and her boyfriend came to visit us for a week, and we had a good time with them, but I felt like he was super annoyed with them the entire time. He was complaining. He was just like, I just feel like they're being super cheap. They don't want to do anything. And it just felt like, again, I thought him and his sister would be a lot closer. It was weird. So we have a great trip with them visiting us, and then we go to Miami and meet up with his best friend and his girlfriend. And this was the best friend he was with whenever I met him in Croatia. So we're in Miami, and for the most part, we're using my funds for this trip because he's obviously put most of his money into this escrow account, and he paid for a little bit of stuff, but he didn't have a whole lot. And I'm expecting this money to hit like any day now. So a couple of days after Miami, we went to Denmark to celebrate his mom's 70th birthday. We had promised her we would go. So we actually booked a round trip flight from Copenhagen when we came back home in June. So now it's August of 2023 and we're in Denmark. And I remember we're at his parents' house and he comes to me. He's like, hey, I just got off the phone with the IRS and they said they flagged the transaction from the apartment complex. And at first I'm like pissed. I'm like, I asked you if this was going to be a problem. He's like, it's not going to be a problem. They're probably just going to take out like some taxes, not the full amount. They just need to review it and then we'll figure it out. But I'm not concerned. You shouldn't be concerned either, even though I was super concerned. He said they set a hearing date for September 10th. At this point, it's the middle of August. So I'm like, okay, so now I have to be struggling for another month. And so I'm frustrated, but he's also like trying to calm me down, but also like gaslighting me for feeling the way I'm feeling. And so all my emotions, I'm just stuffing them in all the way. So we celebrate his mom's 70th birthday, and this is when I meet like his entire extended family, like dad and mom's siblings, all their friends, and I meet the older sister, and she's there. At this point, she's pregnant with her second child. She's there with her first child. I meet her, and she is just such a nice, kind, wonderful human, and I just can't picture her being this evil, crazy woman that beats his mom. And so I remember just feeling a little at odds about that, but I'm still fully trusting my ex 100%. So a couple days after his mom's birthday, we're all hanging out at his parents' house and we're grilling. And I remember we all start to notice kind of around the same time that his dad does not look like he's doing well. And we're starting to get a little bit concerned. And that's when my ex's mom makes the decision, like, we need to take him to the hospital. And so we pack his bags, we load him up, we go to the hospital, and I'm freaking out because I don't know if things can take a drastic turn or not. And so we're waiting at the hospital, waiting to see what the doctors will say, and I will continue on in part 12. The Danish Deception, part 12. So we are in Denmark at this point, and we just took his dad to the hospital, and I'm freaking out, very worried, don't know what's going on. After the doctors do some testing, they basically determine that he's still dealing with blood poisoning and he has like really high infection numbers, but they're not super concerned. And so we all take a deep breath and we're happy that it's not as serious as we thought it was gonna be. And so after a couple days, he's released from the hospital and it's now time for me to head back to the States. And so obviously I'm feeling all these emotions as I'm leaving. I'm sad because I'm leaving him because, again, we are still very much in love with each other, want to be with each other 24/7. So the goodbyes are still really, really tough. And at this point, I didn't know when he was going to be coming back to Dallas because he had a couple different work meetings going on. And so I fly back to Dallas and obviously feeling all the financial stress. Like, this is probably one of the roughest moments of our relationship, especially because we weren't together physically. So the day of his meeting with the IRS, I remember I was a big ball of nerves. Like, I couldn't even sleep that night. You have to keep in mind that I go to bed and I wake up knowing that I'm waking up to news. I don't know if it's good or bad. So I wake up and I call him. I go, how did it go? He goes, worse than I possibly could have imagined. I almost like expected it to have gone bad. I'm like, if it had gone good, I would have been more surprised. And I'm like, what now? He said, well, they scheduled a second hearing for my business account January 10th. And currently my personal account is also under investigation. So they have put a hold on my assets for the next couple months while they continue to investigate. And there's another hearing scheduled for my personal account in October. So basically they froze his assets and told him that he only had like a specific amount of allowance that he was able to use from his money every single month. And I have never heard anything like this. I've never known anyone that have had their assets frozen, and I didn't know how this worked. And obviously at this point, I'm definitely feeling like all the red flags. I'm like, this does not make any sense. But there's not a whole lot I can do. And at this point, I'm just like, the only thing I can do is trust him. There's no one in my life that I was talking to about any of this, because I felt a lot of need to protect him and he wanted me to protect his image. And I remember telling him, like, I really want to talk to my family about this. Like, this is really stressing me out. And he's like, no, don't. Like, they're going to view me differently. So he very much talked me out of being able to disclose this stuff with my close people. So the last thing I want to do is just ramble about shit that does not matter. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. Not a whole lot happened between September of 2023 and November of 2023. The only thing big that happened was that I wanted him to be in Dallas. He wanted to be in Dallas. So I booked him a flight to come to Dallas. I am at this point fully financially supporting us. Like, I think he's getting like maybe like $4,000 a month that the IRS is like allowing him to use. And keep in mind, the Danish IRS is not called IRS. It's called SCAT, some other stuff. I can't even pronounce it. So that's why I'm saying the Danish IRS. So just a little side note. But October comes around. He's now in Dallas. He's been in Dallas for about a month. And we're struggling financially, but still so deliriously happy and in love, which is insane. But I cared about the money, but I loved him more than that. And our relationship was just based on this deep love that we had. And so the money was like almost secondary to the love that we shared. And so basically October comes around, he has the hearing, I'm nervous, and ends up working out in our favor, and his account opens up in October. And I'm so happy. He like immediately sent me, I think like $9,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Like, we're gonna be able to like come out of this. And he said his business account, that was where the 10 million was supposed to be. That was supposed to be opened up not opened up. He was supposed to have a hearing set for January 10th. So that was when we were gonna figure out what was gonna happen. And I remember asking him, like, what do you think is gonna happen? He's like, well, I've been like looking at research, and there's a chance that they might put in like an 18-month to 24-month hold. I go, 18-month hold? And he said, yeah, but I don't think that's what it's gonna be, but you know, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. Again, have never caught him in a lie at this point. And so basically his personal account's opened up. So we're alleviated of a little bit of the financial stress, but it's still like a little bit stressful because obviously I had quit my job and I was doing real estate full time. And let me tell you, y'all, I was working my ass off, but it almost was like I was restarting my career because I hadn't been working in real estate much for that whole entire year. So I was 100% relying on him for maybe like the month of November, I would say. But the rest of the months I was still finding a way to make ends meet. I was still making a little bit of money from like doing like campaigns on Instagram, other things. So I still was like making a little bit. So December rolls around and his 90 days of being in the States is about to be up. So he went back to Denmark the beginning of December. And so my plan was to go and meet him in 2 weeks. So we're gonna spend 2 weeks apart. And so he's in Denmark for about a week and he sends me a message and he says, my dad's back in the hospital. And I was like, no. And so at this point, the plan was for me to go to Denmark and spend Christmas with his family. And this is gonna be my first European Christmas. And I was so excited for the Christmas markets and all the things. But obviously that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is making sure he's okay, making sure his dad gets better. And so I'm going through all these emotions. Number one, I'm missing him. Number two, he's dealing with all of this and we have each other's location. So I can see that he's physically at the hospital in his hometown. So I can confirm that. And so obviously the plan was for me to come in 2 weeks. And he asked me, he's like, what are your thoughts if I move up your flight for you to come in a week? And I said, obviously I need to tie up some things for work, but I would love to be there for you. And he said, okay, like then let's do that. And so I moved up my flight. My sister was watching my dog and I leave. And at this point, the plan is for me to be gone for now 3 weeks. I was originally gonna be gone for 2 weeks. Now it's 3 weeks. And we're still feeling a lot of financial stress, But at this point, like I had like 3 deals in the pipeline. So there's money that's going to be coming in. But obviously we're still stressed out because like money's coming in. That does not mean the money's there. So we were like up to date on like bills, but still 100% stressing out. And so originally the plan was, my ex said that he really wanted to go stay at this hotel called Hotel d'Angleterre in Copenhagen for one night before we went to his hometown to like be with his family. Because his mom had said, I want you guys to just enjoy one day in Copenhagen in the Christmas markets before you come home. And so we were like, okay, we'll do that. And so he hadn't booked any of the hotels or anything. And like the day before I'm flying out to Denmark to go see him, he tells me that he just got charged this huge insurance payment for his 2 apartments. Obviously he sold the apartment complex, but his 2 singular apartments that are rented out, he got hit with an insurance payment, and basically it wiped out like everything he had. So again, I'm annoyed. At this point, I'm just like sensing that a lot of this stuff is just bullshit, but I also am just like, it's the holidays, his dad's in the hospital, so I almost feel bad like coming at him whenever he's already dealing with so much. And he had said that his mom had given him money for like hotels, dinners, things in Copenhagen. She was fully aware of like the insurance payment and the financial position he was in, and she wanted to help. And again, she just wanted us to enjoy Copenhagen for one day before we came back. So we take the train back to Aalborg, and a good family friend picked us up from the train station. We went home, we had dinner, and then immediately we go to the hospital, see the dad, and like he looks sick, but he looks like he's like in decent spirits. And they said he was going to be home for Christmas, and so we were really, really happy about that. So over the course of the next couple days, we're going to the hospital like 2 times, sometimes 3 times a day, just to like take his mom there, check on the dad, make sure everything's going okay. And then the dad comes home, and like obviously he's super weak, and we're like helping him around. But regardless, we had a wonderful Christmas. And even though like we didn't have a lot of money, and I remember like I got him very, very cheap Christmas gifts that year, and same thing for me. I actually told him like, you don't even have to buy me anything, like the gift is being here with your family. And he got me a few small things, but regardless, it was fine. And the day after Christmas, we had gone to a champagne party at one of his friends' homes, and you know, I was excited. It wasn't very often that we like went and like hung out with like friends of his. It was very, very rare. And so we went and we were having a good time. And obviously I didn't know a whole lot of people that were there, but his best friend, the one that he was with when I met him in Croatia, he was there. And we were just chatting outside. And before we had left the house, my ex had told me, I really don't want to go out tonight. Like I just want to go to this party and then come home. And I said, that's totally fine. And so we're at the party, we're outside, just hanging out. I'm talking to his best friend. My ex is inside the home, and his best friend tells me, he goes, you guys should come out tonight. Like, please come out. And I was like, honestly, I'm down to go out, but my ex doesn't want to go out. And that was really weird for him because he always is down to like go out and have a good time. So I already thought it was a little strange. And then his best friend looks at me, he goes, oh, he probably doesn't want to run into any of his enemies from his past gambling addiction. I looked at him and I said, what gambling addiction? And his best friend looks at me and goes, you didn't know that he had a gambling addiction? And we will pick up the rest in part 13. The Danish Deception, part 13. So just to recap, I was spending Christmas with my ex and his family in Denmark. And the day after Christmas, we go to a champagne party. And that's where his best friend told me that he used to have a gambling addiction. So when I hear this, I am just full panic mode. I'm questioning everything and I'm freaking out. I remember it was so cold in Denmark and I was outside, not even wearing a jacket, and I was sweating because I was just like so overheated. And so I asked him, I go, I had no idea. And at this point, his best friend is like mad, like he's angry. He's like, are you serious? Like you didn't know? And I was like, yeah, no, I had no idea. He was like, he told me that he told you. I go, he absolutely did not tell me. And I've loaned him a lot of money over the course of 1.5 years. And he said he owed me money. I was like, he was like, he paid me back the money he owed me, but he did take money from me at one point. And yeah, it was bad. It was like 10 years ago. And so immediately I'm like, can you go inside the house and get him? So he gets my ex walks out. He goes, what's wrong, babe? And I said, do you have a fucking gambling addiction? I remember I screamed it in his face. I did not even care that I was causing a scene. I was just so mad. And he looks at me, he goes, I mean, I did, but it was like 10 years ago, which did check with what his best friend said, that it was 10 years ago. I was young, I was dumb, I was stupid. I would never ever go back to that. And I'm like, well, let's play back all the times that I've given you money. Tell me how to make this make sense. And he's like, I have truly just had a year of so many downs, and I promise you, I would never in a million years gamble away your money. And I don't know what to do to prove it. And I was like, well, this insurance payment that you just told me about, I'm gonna need to see proof of that. At this point, I'm like, I need to see proof. I've been drinking all night, and we get home and I'm just ripping him to shreds. And honestly, he's taking it. He tried a little bit to gaslight me, and I just was like, you're not gonna gaslight me. You're in the wrong, you lied, you have an addiction, and you didn't tell your wife, and you're the problem. And so we spent a while just fighting. I actually ended up going to bed that night, and the next morning I'm obviously still very angry, very hurt. And he was working in the office in his parents' house. And so after he finishes working, I'm like, we need to go for a walk, because obviously his parents were home and they didn't know what was going on. And his parents are really old at this point. I just didn't want to bring any chaos or anything, any drama to the family, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I should have brought the whole family into what was going on, but I guess my natural instinct was to protect him. And so we go on a walk, and obviously I'm angry, and he pulls up this document showing me the invoice from the insurance, and it aligns with the amount that he told me that he had to pay. And so I'm still angry, hurt, all the feelings. And he goes, look at me right now. And I looked at him. He goes, do you really think, you know me, do you really think I'm capable of doing this to you and taking your money and throwing it away? And I looked him in the eye, and I was like, I mean, no, because at this point I had never ever seen a side to him that would ever hurt me intentionally or unintentionally. I feel like he always had my best interests at heart, and that he was just a guy going through hard times. So maybe it's because I'm brainwashed at this point, but I end up deciding to believe him. And especially because he showed me proof. I also asked to see his bank statements, and everything checked out. And so I let it go. And I said, okay, well, do not ever lie to me again. You're my husband, I'm your wife, and you're gonna be honest with me going forward. And if I catch you in a lie again, we're gonna have some problems. Already had plans to go to Budapest for New Year's, that following New Year's, and we found some really cheap flights and a cheap hotel. Honestly, we didn't spend a whole lot of money on that trip, and that's part of the reason why we went. But we went there for New Year's, had a good time. As you can probably imagine, I paid for that entire trip. After Budapest, we went back to Copenhagen for one day, and then I went back to Dallas, and he stayed in Copenhagen because he had a bunch of work meetings. I'm home, and obviously stressing about this upcoming hearing with the Danish IRS, SCAT, or whatever it's called. And I knew it was on January 10th, and I kind of wanted to wait and see if he would bring it up, because a part of me was like, I feel like he's lying about all of this. And so January 9th comes around, and long and behold, he says, oh, my hearing is tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. Telling the truth about that, because if he had just breezed past the date, I would have felt like, okay, he's lying about this whole everything, the business account. And so he tells me the next day he has a hearing. Again, I go to sleep, ball of nerves, wake up the next morning, ask him, how did the hearing go? And he said they ended up deciding to put an 18-month hold on my account. And I'm like, oh, this is so frustrating. I'm just so frustrated. I feel like nothing is going our way. And he said, listen, it's only 18 months. You're doing well at this point. I was doing well with real estate. And he's like, I have my job, and I don't foresee any crazy things happening. So we'll be fine. Don't worry. We'll be okay. And obviously at that point, I wanted to trust him fully, but I also didn't. So I told him I need to see proof of this. And that's when he shows me email confirmation from his lawyer confirming that there was an 18-month hold on this account. And I saw the email. Fast forward to February 10th. It's our anniversary. And so we decided we're going to go out that night. And I remember we talked originally about maybe going on a vacation. But then we ended up canceling the vacation just because we wanted to save some money. And so we ended up just being here for our anniversary. And so we went to a nice restaurant here in Dallas, one of our favorite ones. And we go to dinner, and he's ordering really expensive wine. I think he ordered a $400 or $500 bottle of wine. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, it's our anniversary. And I'm like, I know, but we need to be saving money. And then afterwards, one of my good friends was at a cocktail bar and said, hey, you guys should come and meet us. And we were like, sure. I asked him if he was down. He said, yeah, let's do it. So we go. And we go to this cocktail bar. My friend is there. She's celebrating a birthday of another one of her friends, someone that not super close friends with. And they're with like a big group of girls. So I just went to go say hi to her, see her, say hello. And before I know it, my ex is like, I'm gonna buy everyone around his shots. And we're at a cocktail lounge, just like kind of expensive. And I'm like, is that really necessary? Like, I feel like, and I looked around and everyone had a drink in their hand. I'm like, we don't need to do that. He's like, oh no, it's her birthday, let's do it. I'm like, you don't even know who that girl is. Like, why does it matter? And I remember just being super annoyed because I knew he had just spent like $800 at dinner. And we're at this cocktail lounge and I realized like, he's running up a bill here and he's just chugging old fashions. And he wasn't the biggest drinker. Like he drank and sometimes he would get like really drunk, but it was like pretty rare. And most times he could drink and handle his alcohol very well. And so tonight was really weird because I'm like, we're celebrating our anniversary and you would think that he just like wants to be intentional with our time spending it together. And instead it just feels like he's just slamming these drinks. And I was so confused by why he felt the need to get this drunk. And so he's having a conversation with my friend and I'm like seeing him and he's like slurring his words and then he's talking to my friend and I see like a little bit of spit come from his mouth and like land on like her shoulder and she like wiped it away and I was like, what the fuck is that? That's disgusting. And so he's drank his like third old fashioned and then I look up and he's ordering another one and I look at him, I say, are you sure you should order another drink? And he looks at me, he goes, who do you think you are to tell me when I like what I can and can't drink? And I said, excuse me, I'm just saying, do you need to have another drink? Like, do we need to get belligerent tonight? And before I know it, he's basically just going off on me saying that I'm disrespecting him and I shouldn't be telling him that he needs to slow down and that he's a man. And I'm just confused because we've never really like had arguments like this before. And I'm like, what's your problem? And he's like, you know what, fuck it, let's just go. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we get into the Uber, about to go home, and I'm like, what is your problem? He's like, I just don't like it when you disrespect me in public like that. And I was like, I didn't disrespect you in public. It's not like I yelled, hey, you're drunk, stop drinking. I literally told you right next to you, like there was no one else around. I just said, hey, maybe you should slow down on the drinking. Y'all, I don't know what happened next, but this huge, intense fight spiraled out. We get into the house and we are now screaming at each other. He's telling me that I disrespected him. And now I'm getting mad because I'm like, you're drunk right now. Like, what's going on? Like, you never behave like this. The fight escalates and he ends up walking out of the home. And I'm like, where are you going? And he said, don't worry about me. I'm going to get a hotel tonight and then we're going to see where we stand. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And we will continue on in part 14. The Danish Deception, part 14. I have Smokey here because I truly need emotional support to tell this part of the series. Okay, so he leaves the house, he goes to a hotel, and I'm so baffled and confused. And like the messages he's sending me are just so insane. And this is a side to him that I've never seen before. And I remember I called my best friend Sarah that was living in Germany at the time because of the time difference. She was awake and I'm just bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And like, she comforted me a lot, but I just was hurt and upset and angry. Just why is he treating me like this? And so the next day he says that he is going to come back and get some more of his things and go back to the hotel. And so I'm like, we're still doing this? And he comes over and I'm like, can we have a conversation? He's like, what's there to talk about? Like, I don't know what to talk about. Like, you disrespected me last night. And at this point, I'm like, let's have a conversation about it. And he's like being extremely stubborn about the situation. But over time, he finally is like, okay, it's fine. Like, I'll unpack my bags, I'll stay. And I'm obviously pissed off that he just dropped $1,000 on a hotel room, which he spent like $1,500 the night before for our anniversary and just dropped another $1,000 on a hotel room. It's just like spending money so unnecessarily, and it's making me so mad. But I was like, I just want to keep the peace, so I let it go. And even though I'm still very confused at why he's behaving this way. So a couple days go by and I get a message from one of my really, really good girlfriends, and she says, hey, I've been wanting to reach out to you for some time, but did you know that your ex owes my husband $200,000? And I remember I was like eating lunch. I was next to my ex. I was eating lunch, and I'm just like, I read this message, and I couldn't breathe. Like, I literally could not breathe. And I look at him, I go, what the fuck is this? And he was like, oh, well, you know, we were working this crypto deal where we were selling watches at a profit, and he's being super picky about how much profit he wants to get. I'm trying to find the right buyer, but I'll find it and we'll be fine. And I was like, so you kept it, you have this money that you owe this man, and you lied to me about it? He's like, well, money's currently in watches and it's gonna be fine. Like, I just need to sell them. And so I was like, okay, even though like it's like red flags after red flags, I'm like, there's something up. So I'm really upset at this point, because you don't borrow money from a friend, this amount of money from a friend, and not discuss it with your wife. And so I told him, I'm like, I'm really upset with you that like you didn't talk to me about this, but you know, it's fine. Well, I didn't say it's fine. I just said, this is unacceptable. And I remember that day we really didn't communicate much with each other. We weren't like screaming or fighting with each other. I just like really decided that I wanted to distance myself from him. What he did not know was that I was going to message my friend separately and ask her to ask her husband if the story that was communicated to me by my ex was true. So I asked her, and she responds to me and says, no, this is not correct. And at this point, it's the husband that's communicating. And for the purposes of this playlist and series, I'm going to refer to these individuals as Crypto and Crypto's wife. So Crypto is the one that's responding, and he's saying, no, none of this is true. He told me he had the watches sold a long time ago. He told me he was going to transfer the money, and I've been asking him, and he's been giving me the turnaround time. And, you know, when his dad was in the hospital, I was trying to be respectful, but also like, you know, this is affecting my work because he works very much in crypto. And so I'm reading these messages, and I'm still reading it. And I get to the end, and he said, and just so you know, I had someone look into the wallet that I sent money to, and it's been linked to a gambling website since 2023. And that's when I realized that he was gambling. And in that moment, I just fully collapsed to the ground. I remember I was in the kitchen, and it was like I couldn't even stand anymore. Like, I just collapsed to the ground, and I'm just like crying. And he's like, what is it? I'm like, you're lying to me, you're gambling. And he was like, no, I'm not, like, still lying. And I'm just like, just tell me the truth. Be honest with me for once in your life. Tell me the truth. And he's like, I promise you I'm not gambling. And then I grab his face and I pull it to me, and I scream in his face. I said, tell me the fucking truth. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, I've been gambling. And honestly, I was just quiet. Like, it was just 30 seconds of just silence. And this next part is gonna make you all a little confused, but I actually had a showing 30 minutes after that exact moment. So I went upstairs, I changed, and I grabbed my keys, and I left the house, and I went and showed a house. And it was the most bizarre thing ever. Like, I was in front of clients smiling, even though like everything around me felt like it was crumbling. So he's obviously texting me like, please, like, come home after your showing. Like, I want to have a conversation. And I'm saying, right now, I just feel like I can't talk to you. So I went to a park, and I called my best friend Natalie, and I told her, I was like, hey, I have some news for you. She's like, what's up? You can talk to me. And I told her, I said, he has a gambling addiction, and I just completely lose it. Sorry, you guys, I get emotional at this part. I just completely lose it. And like, Natalie's my best friend. I love her so much. And just being able to like have someone finally to like be open and honest about what was happening made me feel so good, because I felt like I could just release everything. And she was 100% there for me. She lives in New York, but she was like, whatever happens, I don't give a fuck about him. I give a fuck about you. So where do we go from here? And I was like, I don't know where we go. Like, I'm with this man that I love more than anything in the world. I find out he's been lying to me. I find out that he's stolen money from our friends, and I'm just like completely wrecked. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. And she's like, something you need to know is that this is the rest of your life. This is it. This isn't something that just goes away. This is addiction. And she had experience with a gambling addiction specifically, and has seen the damage it's caused. And so she said, this is the rest of your life. Whatever you decide, I will support you, but this will be the rest of your life. And so after that, I go inside the house and he's like, I want to talk. And I'm like, I like still was not ready to talk to him. But I decided to call Crypto's wife, who's my good friend. And I talked to her on the phone, and the first thing I said, I just started bawling my eyes out. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I felt so much guilt, like, that I didn't know that all this stuff was happening, and I had no idea. And I just told her, I'm so sorry. And let me just take a moment and tell you, I don't know if Crypto and Crypto's wife are going to come forward, but they are two of the most beautiful people I've ever known in my entire life. And after what they went through, like, they had every right to like go to the police and ruin our lives. And instead they had empathy and they had love for me. And they were just like, whatever we can do to support you, like, money comes and goes. Obviously we'll figure that out later, but what can we do to support you? And I just was like, I don't know how to be with someone that lies to me and that I don't trust. Like, I don't know what to do. But, you know, at the same time, like, I got married. We said our vows, and we said in sickness and in health, and this is a sickness. And I have no experience with addiction at all. None, zero. Like, I don't even know where to begin. And so I just start doing research and like looking at like podcasts and reading books. And at this point, I'm still very much distancing myself from him. And then I look up a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I find one here in Dallas, and it was an open meeting happening. And I told him, I said, you know, it's still really hard for me to like talk with you, but let's go to this GA meeting. And so we go to the GA meeting. Everyone's like going around circle, telling their stories. I'm just bawling my eyes out during this whole entire thing because I'm hearing like the saddest stories, and I'm hearing like the most beautiful success stories. And so in a way, it like made me understand the depth of what I was going through, but it also gave me hope. And so I, for some reason, still felt like there was like a lot that I didn't know about him. Like, there was stuff missing in my gut and my soul. And I kept asking him, is there anything else you need to tell me? Is there anything else you need to tell me? He said no. At this point, I am still in constant communication with Crypto and Crypto's wife. And Crypto tells me, I was wondering, how would you feel about me hiring a PI to look into his past? And I said, 100%, please do it. And we will continue on in part 15. The Danish Deception, part 15. So before I dive back into the series, there's a few things I wanted to say. The first being that I am giving you guys majority of bad. And there was a lot of good times in our relationship. I would say I was happy 90% of the time, despite the financial struggles that we were going through. And he was what I thought was a very selfless and caring individual. And the other people in my life would also attest to that. There were a lot of times that he did not have money in his account, but when he did, he was very, very generous with it. He was the type of person that would buy whatever people need, would treat them, and I viewed him as selfless. He also was the type of person that would drop anything at any time to help someone in need. So because of those reasons, I truly believed he was a good quality human. I now know that a lot of those things were self-serving, but I wanted to make a note of that so that you guys didn't think it was just like all bad and all like money exchange every single day. It was not like that at all. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the comments. Obviously, I've gotten some negative ones and some positive ones. I want to speak on the positive ones first. Thank you so much. I did not expect to be receiving this much empathy and compassion, and I just want to say thank you. It means the world to me. So thank you so much. And I wanted to speak on the negative ones as well. Obviously, you know, I made some choices that I deeply, deeply regret. I wouldn't be doing this series if that was not the case. And there's not a single comment that's worse than anything that I had told myself already. Listen, I was a Black woman on The Bachelor. I have a thick skin for that reason. So these messages and these comments that are negative, it doesn't faze me at all. Honestly, I couldn't care less. I am prioritizing protecting others over my own self-preservation, and I will never regret that. But what does bother me is there's other victims that are reading these comments and they are feeling like they need to keep silent because they're worried about how other people will perceive them. And when you silence other victims, you are now giving the power back to the predators, and that is what I'm not okay with. So I challenge the people that are making the negative comments to reflect on what you're saying and to make sure we're all keeping the big picture in mind. We are trying to make sure victims can stand up and find their voice, and we can prevent this from happening to other people. That's all. okay, I know enough talking. Let's get back to the series. So Crypto tells me he's going to hire a PI to look into my ex. I was 100% on board with this. I did not tell my ex this was being done. So those few days where I was waiting for the results, I remember just being so nervous. I'm like, I don't even know what's going to come up. Like, I feel like, do I even know this man? And so after a couple days, Crypto sends me a text and he says, okay, here are the preliminary findings. The first thing was that there was no criminal history found whatsoever. So that made me feel a little bit good, because I was like, okay, maybe this situation with Crypto is kind of like an isolated incident and it's not like as bad as I think it is. Like, he didn't like con like a ton of people in Denmark. And then the big thing that he found was that my ex did not go to the Olympics, not once and not twice. And when I found this out, I was sick to my stomach. And the first thing that I felt was embarrassment, because like, why did I not look this up? And I think the reason why I didn't look it up is because the way he downplayed it, like, oh, I didn't play, I was like backup of a backup. It just was like an afterthought to me. It's also why I didn't like bring it up to other people. There's a lot of people that didn't even know that he mentioned that he went to the Olympics, because I didn't really talk about it, because it was like I said, it was an afterthought. And so I was just deeply upset by this information, just to know that someone could lie about something like this. I was like, this is truly sick. When I received this message, I was at an open house, and luckily it was a vacant house and there was no one in this home. So I had my time to do some research, and I start looking through our WhatsApp messages and videos, trying to just reflect on all the things that he told me. And I see the photos that he sent me of his apartment in Copenhagen, the one that he had sold a year prior. And so I downloaded the photos, and then I reverse Google image searched them, and it pulled up an interior designer's home in Germany. And that just fully sent me completely, because obviously this is a house that he just purchased and sold and made that $500,000 in profit, and half of it went towards the tax bill and half of it went to his friend's plumbing business. And so I'm just like, this is so sick and disgusting. I can't believe someone would have the audacity to lie about this. So I go back home. He actually was at the gym, so I'm just home spiraling, waiting for him to get back. And he walks in, and the second he walks in, I immediately say, I need you to sit down, we need to have a talk. And he automatically looks kind of annoyed. He's like, what now? Because obviously we've been really going through it the past week with like finding out about his addiction. He's been going to GA meetings. I've been wanting to talk about his addiction all day, every day, because I want to get as much information as possible. And so he's just like, I'm drained, I'm tired. I'm like, sit down, we need to talk. So he sits down, and I say, did you go to the Olympics? And he goes, yes, I did. I go, no, I'm gonna ask you one more time. Did you go to the Olympics? He goes, I went to the Olympics. So I say, okay, well, I'm going to give your mom a call and I'm gonna verify it with her. So I pull up my phone and I dial her number. It actually rings once. And he goes, okay, I didn't go to the Olympics. And I just remember just sitting there and just being like, who lies about something like that? And I told him, on top of that, you also lied about the apartment that you were living in. I was like, this is sick. And at this point, I'm spiraling because I don't know what's real or what's fake. And so I tell him, listen, I saw the email from your lawyer about the business account, so I feel like I got the proof I needed for that, but I do need proof about the other 2 apartments in Copenhagen. He said, absolutely. And that's when he pulls up the lease agreements, and obviously the lease agreements are like all in Danish, but he's like translating it for me. There's like the name, there's the address, there's the amount they're paying, it's their lease term, all these things. And so I was like, okay, I felt like this was proof. And so at this point, I like don't know where we go from here. And like, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like 100%, I was thinking about just picking up the phone, calling my family, and just being like, this is happening, I need to leave him. But I'm still so in love with this man. I can't picture a life without him. Despite everything that he's put me through, I just felt like I could not say goodbye to him. And I really just felt like this disease is the enemy, not him. So we need to work as a team and fight it together and overcome this. And I felt like we were capable of anything at this point. You know, and especially like with the challenges that we had already gone through, I felt like we were invincible, like we could overcome anything. That's the mentality that I was going into it with. And so obviously I'm talking to him about my reservations. I was like, I don't know where we go from here. Like, and I did tell him that I didn't know like how to move forward. And that's when he just like starts crying, and he's just like, I love you so much. Like, whatever I can do to prove to you that I will be the man that you deserve, I will do it. And he was like, I'm sick to my stomach about what I did to Crypto and his wife. I saw him, and he was, living such a great life. And in my mind, I thought like I could take some of his money and like make more money, and then I could give him this interest, and then we would have some money. And I was like, listen, this is all delusion. And at this point, I've done a lot of research on gambling addiction, and it's like it's all a delusion centered around this dream world where you're going to provide these cars and nice and luxuries to the people that you love when you get your big win, and it never happens. And so I just said, listen, you need to know, and I know you already know this, I don't need these things. I don't need the big house, the fancy cars. I don't need any of this. I don't. Like, I'm happy just being here in Dallas with you and just hanging out with Smokey on the couch watching movies. I don't need any of this. And I did feel so ill and disgusted, but I'm still so in love with him. Despite the lies, despite everything, the love was still 100% there. And so I communicated to him, I said, listen, things have got to change or you're gonna lose me, plain and simple. And he said, I will do anything I can to keep you. And like, this is my first time seeing him cry, and as you guys can assume, I'm a very empathetic person. So at that time, I just went over to him and hugged him, and we both just like cried together for like an hour. And it felt like the breakthrough I had been waiting for our entire relationship, because I'd never seen this emotional side to him. And I felt like, okay, like we've had this breakthrough, now we can move forward. And so we had already had a trip booked to Colombia because he only could be in the States for 90 days. So we're like, where can we go that's affordable and you can reset the 90 days without having to fly all the way back to Denmark? And so we went to Cartagena, Colombia, and it was a very affordable trip. And I know a lot of you are thinking like, how are you traveling? He was making a very steady income. And once I found out about the gambling, like his account was like stacking back up. I had told him like, we're going to reach out to crypto. We're going to set up a payment plan. And I had told crypto about the trip to Colombia that we had already booked, so that I didn't seem like we were being disrespectful towards him. I had a feeling that he had the ring for some time and that he was going to propose, and he knew that he could not propose to me with everything that was going on, and he needed to take time. And by the time we were going to Colombia, I felt like we were getting our lives back on track. We were obviously stacking up our money again, and I felt like he was being open and honest with me. He would talk to me about his addiction. He was going to GA meetings every single week, but I still did not feel comfortable accepting a proposal unless he made amends with crypto and crypto's wife. And so I told him the day before we went to Colombia, I said, we need to go and have a sit-down conversation with crypto and crypto's wife. And obviously I realize now that my ex should have been the one to suggest that we go make amends with crypto and crypto's wife. But regardless, we go there the day before we go to Colombia, we go to their house and we sit down in front of crypto and crypto's wife, and I will pick back up in part 16. The Danish Deception, part 16. Okay, let me recap a little bit for you guys. So it is now April of 2024. I found out about his gambling addiction in February of 2024. So we've had a very, very solid good. And then my ex began to talk, and he basically just said, I know that I did these things, but it almost was like I was a different person. Like it felt like I wasn't in control of myself and my actions. And it was just, he was just speaking from the heart and just saying like this addiction took over me, and I almost didn't know right from wrong. And crypto and crypto's wife both took turns talking, and they were just so understanding. And they communicated, we understand this is a disease, and we still care about you both, and we still want to have both of you in our lives. And it just felt like it was a great conversation, and I felt like we can move forward from here. We're going to set up a payment plan, and everything's going to be okay. And so the next day we go to Cartagena, Colombia, have a spectacular time. And I was kind of expecting the proposal throughout the trip, and I didn't know when it was going to come. And then there was a night that we went to dinner, and then we went out for a drink, and then we came back home. And the hotel we were staying at had a rooftop that was like overlooking the city. And so we went up there with a bottle of wine, and we're just drinking wine and just talking. And I, at that moment, just felt so grateful for him and for his sobriety and for his honesty. And before I know it, I look down and he's down on one knee, and he tells me, I know this isn't your dream proposal, and I know I've let you down a lot, but I will make it up to you, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man that you deserve. And at this point, I'm just hysterically crying, and I'm so happy. And it really did feel like the happiest moment of my life, and the yes was so easy. There was not a doubt in my mind. It kind of felt like it did whenever we got married. There was no hesitation, but it felt much more deeper this time around, because now I know about his flaws, and I know about his struggles, and I know he's not this, perfect individual, which nobody's perfect. We're just imperfect people that come together and try to have a relationship. So after Cartagena, we come back, and we're just trying to enjoy ourselves, enjoy being engaged, sharing it with our family and friends, because at this point we can actually tell our friends and family like we're spending forever together. So we are so just happy to be able to take it all in. And Easter comes around, and I remember I was making a roast, and I had one of my friends was over, and my little sister, and I'm making a roast, and we're eating on Easter Sunday after we went to church. And my ex gets a message from his mom, and she's like, I need you to call me right now. And she never does that. So obviously we're freaking out, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes upstairs, and he's gone for maybe like a couple minutes, and I can hear him talking in Danish. And he comes downstairs, and I'm like, what's happening? He was like, well, my dad's back in the hospital because he was going to therapy and like fell and broke his hip, and he went to go get a hip replacement surgery. And after the surgery, like he was like, you know, recovering fine, and then out of nowhere his heart stopped, and they had to resuscitate him, and he's fine now, but his mom just wanted us to know. And so I'm like freaking out, and we didn't really know what was going to happen when we went to bed that night. So we wake up the next morning, we get the news that he's doing just fine, and I just remember feeling so relieved because we didn't know what we were going to wake up to. To this day, I don't know why his heart stopped, but regardless, we're just happy he was doing good. So over the course of a month, his dad's health is, you know, he's still doing good. Me and my ex are doing really, really good. We just got engaged to the world. Finances are getting better. He's being honest with me. He's still going to GA meetings, and, you know, I feel like things are getting better. And so we traveled to Panama for my 30th birthday, and we were with my sister and some of my friends and my ex, and he was actually the only guy on this trip, which was 100% unintentional. And we're on our way to Panama, and while we're in the air, obviously my phone's on airplane mode, and we land, and I take the airplane mode off, and I look at my phone, and I have all these calls from his sister and his sister's boyfriend. And so I'm a little bit confused. I open up the messages, and I see that she's saying, you need to call me immediately. Immediately, I was like, oh, something bad's happened. And so I look at my ex, I show him the messages, and obviously he has similar messages as well on his phone when he turns it on. And so he was like, there's nothing we can do. We're sitting on a plane. Let's just get off the plane, and then I'll call her. So we get off the plane, and we just kind of step aside. He calls her, and he's like, okay. And he's talking in Danish, so I don't really understand what's going on. And then he gets off the phone. I was like, what happened? He was like, oh, his heart stopped, and they weren't able to resuscitate him. And I was like, what? And I was like, your dad died? And it was the most like uncomfortable position for me because he did not show any emotion at all. And I was like, are you okay? Like, and I just like remember just holding his hand. I was like, what can we do? Like, what can I do for you? He's like, honestly, let's just go through customs and let's get to the hotel, and then we'll figure it out there. And it was the most bizarre situation ever because it's like his dad's death did not faze him at all. And like, I am someone that's very, very close to my dad, and so I put myself in his shoes, and I'm like, I'd be wailing on the floor, screaming at the top of my lungs. And so, you know, I know everyone deals with grief differently. So I just wanted to support him in any way I could. So we go to the hotel, and his mom calls him, and we're on FaceTime, and she's just bawling her eyes out. And I saw like one tear come from his eye. And that's when I realized it felt like he was more sad that his mom was sad than he wasn't that his dad died. Again, this is me just making assumptions. I don't know for a fact that was what he was feeling, but I did feel a little bit strange. And at this point, I'm looking at flights to go back to Dallas so that we can get on a plane to go to Aalborg, Denmark, to be there for his family. And so I'm looking at flights, and he's talking to his mom on the phone. He gets off the phone, and he was like, we're actually gonna stay. I go, we're gonna stay? He's like, it's your 30th birthday. I just talked to my mom. Like, she does not want us to leave. The funeral is not going to be for a week, so we're just going to enjoy our time here, and then we're going to go back home. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like, how am I supposed to celebrate my birthday when my father-in-law just passed away? It just felt so wrong. And I just remember, like, we tried our best to have a good time on the trip, but it was just like, we were sad every day. And there was one night that my ex got really bad food poisoning. We had to get a doctor into the room to give him an IV. It just felt like everything was going wrong. And so I am not gonna lie, I need to go back to Panama and experience it again because that trip was like not it. And I wanted to make something very clear. He paid for everything for that trip to Panama. So like flight, hotel, and all the meals for everyone, including me and the girls that were on the trip. So we go back to Dallas for one day, and then we head to Denmark, and it was so nice being there for his family. It was so emotional, and seeing his mom cry, just be so sad, it like broke my heart. Again, I'm not sensing a whole lot of emotion from my ex, but you know, like I said before, everyone processes their grief in different ways. But we go to the funeral, and I remember I'm sitting in the front row holding my ex's hands, and I look up at him and I see like he's like starting to cry like at the funeral, and that's the first time I've seen him cry. And so I was like, okay, there's emotion there. Like, I don't know where like the emotion's coming from. Like, is it coming from like losing his dad, resentment from, you know, regrets. I really don't know, but I definitely could sense there was emotion there. And so after the funeral, the next couple days, I just spent a lot of time with his family, and I spent a lot of time with his older sister because she was around, because the mom wanted all of her kids and grandkids to be around her. Obviously, she just lost her husband of 50 years. And so I started spending a lot more time with the older sister, and, I'm not picking up on like a whole lot of bad vibes. Like, I thought she was super nice. I thought her kids were so cute, and I love babies. I love little kids. So I really started to bond with her kids. And so it was a good trip. Obviously there was definitely some tension, but regardless, I think everyone got along, and, we were able to just support each other while they all grieved, like losing their father and, slash husband. So after being in Denmark for about a week, I had to go back to Dallas because I had some listings that needed to go live and I had to work. And so I'm back home in Dallas for maybe like a couple days, and I get an email from immigration saying that I have a notification, and I will continue the rest in part 17. The Danish Deception, part 17. Okay, so I get a notification from immigration, log into my account, and long behold, the petition was approved. And I remember I was relieved for a few reasons. The first one is that, obviously we get to start building a life here together in Dallas, but also if there was any skeletons from his past, I feel like it would not have been approved. So I almost felt like relief whenever I saw that. And so I called him, and obviously he was excited. We called our lawyer, asking her, what are the next steps? And she said, well, you can stay in the States next time you come, and we can file for a work visa and a travel visa, but you're not gonna be able to go back to Denmark. And at this point he was like, since my dad's passed, like I can work remote. Work's been a little bit slow, so I can work remote. Obviously I might have to pull small nighters, which isn't ideal, but it's worth it to be with you. And so I said, okay, that's fine. After a couple of weeks, he comes back to Dallas, and he comes with his mom this time. This is her first time in the United States. And I remember just being so excited, and I wanted her to have the best time because, she's just lost her husband of 50 years. And I go to DFW to pick them up. I had a big sign saying, welcome to Dallas. And I also got his mom some flowers, and it was just such a special moment. She had like this American flag draped around her, and she's just like so proud to be in the States. So we come back home, I cooked dinner, and we just spent the week exploring Dallas. And then we had gone to Key West for about 5 days. We did Miami and Key West with his mom. And I will say a lot of that trip was paid for by his mom. She wanted to cover a lot of it, which was just so sweet. And then I remember I paid for the flights, and then he paid for a bunch of stuff while we got there, but she paid for most of the hotel. So we all kind of paid for a little bit. But I know y'all haven't forgotten this man still owes me money. And so I remember we were in Key West, and I said, hey, are you gonna start sending me some funds? And it was awkward because I wanted to bring it up for a while, but then we went to Panama, he paid for everything, then his dad passed away, and I didn't, it's just, now it's getting kind of awkward for me to bring it up. And so he's like, yeah, I'm gonna send you some money. We go through the trip in Key West, have a good time, come back to the States. He still hasn't sent me money. He's giving me the turnaround, and I'm getting a little antsy, and I'm getting very triggered. And so we're in the living room, and he says he wants to just go on the balcony and get some fresh air. And I start creeping. I walk up to the window, and I'm trying to look over his shoulder at his phone, and he doesn't know I'm looking. And on his phone, I see there's a gambling website, and my stomach is in knots, and his mom is currently in the living room with me. So there's nothing that I can really say, because again, I'm still wanting to protect him. And again, I will repeat this one more time. I wanted to tell everyone about his addiction and our issues. I wanted to tell the world. But he very much said, everyone's going to view me differently. With the excuse with his mom, he was like, she's an old woman, you're going to stress her out, and she's not going to be able to do anything about it, and now she's just stressed. So he was able to manipulate me into not bringing it up to anyone. And so his mom is here, and I don't say a word. Instead, I send him a text, and I just say, and it's weird because he's in the same, like, he's 5 feet from me, and I send him a text saying, I see a gambling website on your phone. I'm going to need to see your bank statements as soon as possible. And he tells me, I'm only on this website because that's where I can watch sports for free. And I was just like, huh? This makes no sense. Obviously, I'm detecting all the bullshit. So I say, I want to see your bank statements right now. He pulls them up, and like at this point, he has his Revolut statements, which I don't know if you guys remember, the very first time I sent him money, I downloaded an app called Revolut, kind of like Venmo. He uses that for a lot of things in the States because you basically get the local currency rate if you use Revolut, and he had like a physical card that was tied to his Revolut. So I wanted to see that. So he printed out, or didn't print out, he showed me like the statements directly from his phone for Revolut, and then he showed me his Danish bank account and the transactions, and I went through everything with a fine-tooth comb over the course of like months and did not see anything alarming at all. So obviously I saw this gambling website on his phone, but I checked his bank accounts, I didn't see anything. So I let it go, but I was very clear, I better not ever see this on your phone ever, ever, ever again. So his mom leaves after having a great trip, and at this point I'm still like waiting for these transfers, and I'm like, what's going on? And he keeps telling me that he has things to pay for. Like he said he was helping his mom out with something, and then he said that he had another insurance payment, and there was a few things that he said he had. And then finally I'm like, okay, I'm done with the bullshit, like you need to start transferring me some money. And so basically he tells me that he's transferred a certain amount. He has a transfer limit that he can transfer to his Revolut, which is how he can send me money. And he's hit his monthly transfer limit. I don't really know what the fuck that means, but he said he hit it. And so I'm still very frustrated, but he basically says that he can't send me any more money until August timeframe. And during that time, his best friend came to visit, and the same best friend that was with him whenever I met him in Croatia. And what my ex didn't know was that I was in communication with his best friend, talking to him about the gambling, the issues. I didn't tell my ex that I was talking to him, but I just wanted to speak to someone from his past. Obviously, keep in mind that I don't have a lot of people to talk to, so it just made me feel a lot less alone. But basically, I'm putting more pressure on my ex, being like, hey, like you need to start sending me money. And keep in mind, I'm also paying for like most of the household bills, and now like he's here full time, like you gotta pitch in, bro. And I'm not here to be your sugar mama, even though I have low-key been your sugar mama unintentionally. So I'm getting frustrated, and we get a notification that his work visa has been approved. And so I'm excited about this because this means that he can get a social, he can get a bank account. And something to keep in mind is when you're married to a gambling addict, you wanna make sure you take full financial control. And that was hard for me to do because with his Danish bank account, he had like a 2-factor authentication that scanned his face. So I couldn't just like log in whenever. But with Chase, I was like, all I need is a password. So we go to Chase, he opens up a bank account, and he says, I'm just gonna make a transfer from my Danish bank directly to my Chase bank, and then I'll be able to start sending you money via Zelle. And I'm like, okay, perfect, that works. Because he had like this limit on Revolut, or I couldn't remember the details, but I remember it didn't make sense. And every time I pressured him like for it to make more sense, he would gaslight me, and so we wouldn't get anywhere. And so I was getting very frustrated. But I'm like, okay, now you have Chase. So he tells me that he makes a big transfer to Chase, and that he is waiting for that to hit. And a couple days go by, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, oh yeah, okay, the transfer hit. And he shows me an email from Chase, and it said like, we need to verify your identity. And he's like, oh, Chase is asking for this verification, and because I haven't done this verification, my account's locked. I'm like, okay, stop bullshitting. I know Chase, I go to Chase, I've been banking at Chase for a long time, and I felt like he was bullshitting. And so he said, you know what, let's go to the bank and talk about it, because I mean, I know I have money in there because I made this transfer like a while ago. And I said, okay, let's go to Chase. And this is when I start like thinking to myself, you know what, I'm gonna play a game. We're gonna go to Chase, and I'm gonna try to get out of the car and go into the bank with him. If he says, no, you should just wait in the car, I'm gonna know he's hiding something. And I really just wanted to see how he would react. So we go to Chase. He gets out of the car, and I start to get out of the car. He's like, oh, I'm just gonna be in and out, babe. You can just wait in the car. And I'm like, red flag. And you know what? I let him do his thing. I let him go inside. I'm like, okay, let's see what he comes back with. So he comes back and he says, hey, I'm able to take out, like, it was like $1,000 he's able to send to me. And he's like, here's like $1,000. I go, at this point, he told me he was going to send me like 5,000. And so I'm like, what's going on? Are you lying? He was like, no, I'm not lying. I was like, well, I'm tired of carrying this relationship on my back and I'm over it. And that was like, this is when I start really standing up for myself and telling him that I'm just done with the bullshit. And he gets so angry with me. I remember he had his gym bag in the car because the plan was for us to go to the bank, me drop him off at the bank, or me drop him off at the gym, and then I was going to go to a showing. I drop him off at the gym and he slams the car door. He goes, don't worry about picking me up, I'll walk home. And I get home and I'm like, can we please talk about this because I want to squash this. He goes, the way you talked to me was so disrespectful and I'm not okay with it. There's money in that account. And I said, listen, I'm getting triggered. Like, I feel like you're lying about a lot of things and it's making me feel like you're gambling. So I just need you to tell me the truth. He's like, I am telling you the truth. And like, you disrespected me, making me feel like less of a man, that like you've, supported us more than I have. And I was like, I'm not trying to make you feel like less of a man. I'm just telling you that I'm fucking tired of carrying this shit on my back. And he storms off, goes upstairs, goes in the guest bedroom, closes the door, and he refuses to talk to me and like locks the door. And I'm like, what is going on? I remember just being so angry because I'm like, you're the one with the addiction. You're the one that's hurt me. And somehow you're finding a way to put it all on me. And that's not okay. So I remember being really upset. And so basically I had a work event that night and I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to go. And then finally I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go. I need to get out of the house. So I go. And at this point, it's really hard for me to hide my emotions. And a lot of the people at my last real estate firm probably remember this event. I showed up and I just was like bawling my eyes out. And like a lot of people didn't know what was going on, but I was just really, really sad and struggling a lot because I just felt like I was being gaslit. And I remember there was one of my coworkers and we were sitting in a corner at this event. And I actually ended up telling her about my ex's addiction because I just, in that moment, needed to talk to someone about it. And she was so sweet, so welcoming. Shout out to you, you know who you are. And so basically I go back home and he's upstairs in the bedroom, not wanting to talk to me. So I'm like, can we please talk? He's like, I don't want to talk to you. And I was like, okay. So basically I'm on the couch and it kind of worked out because we have some really good friends that they have cars that they use for Toro that they own. And we had picked up one of their cars because they were out of town earlier that day. And their car was outside and the keys were right on the counter. And so I was like, you know what? I know the PIN code to his Danish card. I bet it's the same PIN code for his Chase card. And so what I did was I grabbed the key to the car, my friend's car, and I like kind of sneakily snuck out of the house because I didn't want him to hear the garage and be like, where's she going? So I snuck out of the house. I went to Chase and I put his card in. I put in the PIN code and it was accepted. And I clicked the lovely button that said check balance. And what was in his account? 34 cents. And we will continue on in part 18. The Danish deception, part 18. Where did we leave off at? Oh yeah, 34 cents. So I look at his bank balance and it's 34 cents. And at this point it's 1 a.m., which is why I was super sneaky with the way I got into my friend's car and went to the ATM because I didn't want him to hear the garage and be like, where's she going? So when I came home, I literally popped melatonin and went to bed. I didn't even want to open that can of worms because it's late at night. So the next morning I wake up, I look at him, I go, I have something to bring up to you and you better not lie. And I don't even think you're gonna be able to lie. He goes, what is it? Then I pull up the phone because I, took a picture of his bank balance. I'm like, this is actually the balance in your bank account. And he just looks at me and he's at a loss for words. And for a narcissist, that's the most beautiful thing in the world when they have literally nothing to say. But I remember just looking at him and saying, you're a liar. You don't have any money in your account. You're supposed to be the one responsible for bills. And I know you're gambling. And he told me, I am 100% not gambling. I promise you the transfer was supposed to hit and it didn't hit. And I felt like if I told you I didn't receive the money, you would have thought I was lying. So let me get this straight. Instead of telling me the truth, you lied to me because you were afraid that I was gonna think you were lying. Makes perfect sense. So at that point, I'm just so irritated and just honestly disgusted by him. And I told him, well, listen, I don't want to be around you today until you tell me the truth of what's going on. Because at this point, I felt like he was gambling and I just didn't want to talk to him. So I luckily had a few showings, went to the showings, and my best friend Onyeka, who lives here in Dallas, calls me. And I'm not even kidding, I answer the phone and I immediately start crying. And she's like, come over. I said, okay, I'm on my way. So I go to her house and I sit her down and I tell her everything. And this was just a very, very, very heartbreaking time for me, because this is now another close friend that I'm letting in. And I'm telling you all, when I let it out, I let it out. And it was just so heartbreaking. And she was such a good friend. She just listened to me. She didn't tell me you need to leave him, even though at this point I felt like there's no way he's going to change. But I'm still so blinded by love and still very much brainwashed to think that this man is everything to me. And I decided to go back home and I had a conversation with him and I said, listen, I'm just going to start distancing myself right now. I don't know where to go from here. I feel like you're always lying to me and it's getting really, really difficult. And so it was a couple days and, we're still like getting along, but he can definitely tell that I'm pulling back because I still know that there's something he's hiding. And something to keep in mind is that he has a Danish phone and he has a US phone because when he got his work visa approved, he got a US number. Especially when he was applying for jobs, he didn't want to put like a Danish phone number, which makes sense. And so for the most part, he was using his US phone. While he was here, he would use his Danish phone like at nighttime. But his US phone is what he used to communicate with everyone. So the Danish phone, he actually leave that out all the time. And so he was downstairs, I was upstairs. I see his Danish phone on the nightstand, and I'm not ashamed to admit that at this point I had been going through his phone very frequently. So I open up his phone, go to the Safari page, open up, see the gambling website that's just right in front of my face, and I am just gut-wrenched. And I can see how much money he can gamble and what he's betting on. And I kid you not, first of all, it was $5,000 that he was gambling. And second of all, he was gambling on the most random sports in the most random countries that I'm like, what is this? Like, this makes no sense. And I go downstairs with his phone and I'm bawling my eyes out at this point because I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm exhausted, I'm so tired. And at this point, I'm asking myself, like, how can I still be in love with this man when he causes me this much pain? And the craziest part was that he was still lying. He said, I told you I watch sports on that website. And I was like, you're an idiot. Like, you are an idiot. Like, you're gambling. I can see the money in there. So either you want to be honest with me or get out of the house because I don't even want to look at your face. And so he keeps trying to lie to me, keeps trying to bullshit me. And then I'd say, you know what? I'm just going to pack my bags and just go to my friend's house. And then he said, okay, I'll leave. I'll go to the gym. I'll go run some errands. So he leaves the house and I'm sitting there. The first thing I do is call crypto and I'm literally in tears. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say. And he said, Onyeka, this is literally not your fault. You are doing everything you can to be a supportive spouse to this man. And it's not your fault that he cannot stop lying to you. And he had told me previously, like we had owed them $200,000. But he said the amount of crypto that my ex had borrowed from him at that time was $160K. And so he said, listen, because that's the amount that he borrowed at the time, obviously the crypto had gone up. I think it had gone up to like 300K at that point. And when his wife had brought it up to me, it had gone up to 200K, gone up even higher. He said, how about you guys just pay us the original amount that was borrowed? And I said, I just feel like that's not fair to you. And he said, I promise you I'm okay. Another reason to just love crypto. He's amazing. And one thing he said to me was that if you're not seeing him want the progress for himself, that's when there's a problem. So you need to know when you've had enough, and you need to know if he's not taking this seriously and taking his recovery seriously. And I agreed with him. And, I will be honest, like I, in that moment, was not ready to leave him. I still was fully in love with him, still fully brainwashed into thinking that he was this great person. So crypto said we could skip that month's payment and then pick back up the next month because he knew I was, carrying everything on my back and he didn't want me to bleed myself dry because of my ex's issues. And, it's kind of messed up that I was even the one that was having these conversations with him and not my ex. And I just took ownership because I've never owed anyone money before. And I wanted to do what was right, and I wanted to be respectful of him. And so I also told him, just so you know, like, he has a business account that's going to be opened back up in July, because, you know, it had an 18-month hold. So once that's lifted, we'll be able to pay you back the rest of the money that we owe you. So keep that in mind. We're going to obviously pick back up on the payment, so you will be made whole. And he said, okay, that's totally fine. And so we left it at that. My ex comes home and I sit him down, and this is the first time that I bring up divorce. And I tell him, right now, I don't know if I can be in this marriage anymore. And I really am contemplating filing for divorce and calling my parents and telling them everything. And he said, please, like, I cannot lose you. I'm going to get better. He said, I want to get better. Like, I want to get better for me and for you. And so I said, at this point, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit back and watch you, and I'll decide if I want to stay with you. And he said, okay, I'll prove it to you. So over the course of the next, I will say, 4 months, this was October 2024. And over the course of the next 4 months, like I said, I'm not going to just sit here and ramble. I'm trying to get to the good part, guys. I promise. I remember his mom had come back to visit us for Thanksgiving. She met my parents. It went great. The following month, my mom came back, spent Christmas with us. Things were going good. And I remember when January hit, I was like almost a little bit excited, because I was like, this is the year the business account's going to open up. And it had been about 3 months since his relapse, and I felt like he was making a lot of effort to get better. He was going to GA meetings, he was going to therapy, he was having money in his account, all the good signs. And he had the 2 apartments in Copenhagen and was putting in a notice to kick the tenants out so that he could sell those apartments. So basically the plan was to use the business account to pay for our wedding, to pay off crypto, and then we were gonna sell the 2 apartments, and that was gonna be like our base to start like investing and build our foundation here in Dallas. And we had kind of delayed wedding planning because, you know, we wanted to be smart financially. We're not gonna plan a wedding a year after all this stuff happened. And also, like, you know, we wanted to prioritize paying back crypto. But we were looking at the numbers, and with the business account, we were going to be able to make crypto whole, and we'd have some extra money for the wedding. And in addition to that, you know, we were both making an income. So we were starting to talk about wedding plans. Obviously, I'm Nigerian and my parents are very traditional, and I love my culture, and I was excited to do a traditional wedding. And I was talking to my parents about what I wanted, and I was like, maybe we could do a wedding in Nigeria. And, you know, they were really excited about it. They were hyped to plan it. You know, they loved my ex, and, you know, we were getting excited. And so my mom said that they were going to go starting to look at venues and all the things. And at this point, I kind of figured that my parents were going to cover the traditional wedding, because we were going to cover the white wedding. When I say white wedding, I mean white dress. So traditional wedding, the Nigerian wedding, white wedding is like white dress walking down the aisle. So in case you hear me say that, not because I'm marrying a white guy. So I'm talking wedding plans with my mom, and she brings up finances. And that's when she proceeds to tell me that my ex has told her that he is going to pay for both weddings in full. And I'm sitting there just confused, because I'm thinking about the money that we have coming in and our 2 salaries. And I'm like, okay, we're good to pay back crypto, and we're good for our white wedding, but we don't have any wiggle room to pay for an additional wedding. So I call him up, and at this point, I'm angry. I go, why did you commit to paying for a wedding without telling me? And I will continue on in part 19. The Danish Deception, part 19. And I don't want to waste y'all's time, so this part's actually going to cover between January 2025 and July of 2025. Okay, so I call my ex, and I'm just so confused. Why did you commit to paying $10,000 for this wedding? I just do not understand. And he said, well, you know, I really just wanted to help your parents out. And now I understand narcissists have this need and desire to be admired, and that's where it came from. It wasn't just him wanting to be a good person. But I was super frustrated, and we talked about it, went back and forth. I'm like, we don't have to do this. Like, my parents are very generous. I know they'd be more than happy to like pay for the wedding. But he said, no, like, let's just give them something. Let's give them 10,000. I was like, I just feel like we don't need to do that. He's like, no, let's do it. So I call my mom and my dad, and I said, hey, are you guys comfortable with us paying $10,000? And they were like, absolutely, that's fine. Like, we'll cover the rest. And they loved my ex, and they were excited for this wedding. And side note, I had communicated to my parents about the business account. So I told them, we're going to end up paying you in July, if that's okay with you, just because we had a bunch of expenses. They didn't know about like the payments of crypto and everything, but I just said, hey, we're going to pay you in July. I hope you're okay with that. And they were more than fine with that. And so we put that to rest. I need you guys to remember that $10,000 that was promised to my parents. There's a reason why I'm bringing it up. It's going to come back in the end. So now it's January of 2025. We are in this year, you guys. I promise this is coming to a close tomorrow, so get ready. But it's January 2025. We get the news that his green card has been approved, and we're so excited. And I remember just being over the moon. And one of the biggest reasons why we were excited is because our very, very best friends were getting married in March in Spain. So we were so hyped and excited to go celebrate them. And at first we didn't even know if we could go to the wedding. And so when the petition got approved, it meant that he can travel out of the States. And so we're getting super excited. We weren't just going to Spain. We were also going to go to see his family in Denmark because his little nephew was getting baptized. And then we were also going to go to Portugal for 2 days to look at wedding venues. So this was a very, very exciting trip for us. And before you guys come for me, we were in what I thought was a great financial position, and we were up to date on our payments with crypto. So it was okay for us to go on these trips. So we have such an amazing time at the wedding. It was a very small, intimate wedding. There's 30 people there. It was perfect. And afterwards, we went and saw his family, went to his nephew's baptism, spent a lot of time with his extended family too. That was wonderful. And then we went to Portugal to look at venues. And I remember I set up a couple tours, and I made sure to be very mindful of cost because obviously I wanted us to be smart and I didn't want us to go over budget. And I remember having a conversation with him, telling him that, listen, I do not want this wedding if it's going to jeopardize your sobriety. So if we need to wait a year, if we want to renew our vows at year 5, we can do that. I do not want this wedding to put any pressure on you. And he said, the business account's going to open up this summer. We're going to be okay. I promise. I don't want you to stress about that. And so I believed him and I trusted him. So we look at a couple different venues and we find one that we really like, and it's very reasonably priced. The deposit was only 1,500 euros. And he said that his mom was going to actually pay for it. And I said, hey, that's fine. That works perfectly for me. So we get home and he said, I just feel like it doesn't make sense for me to have $60,000 to $70,000 worth of watches. So I think I'm going to sell my watches. And I asked him, are you 100% sure? He said, yes, it's unnecessary, especially with us trying to accomplish all of these financial goals, and just having these expensive watches just does not make sense. And so I 100% supported him. And so he packed up the watches in the boxes, and then he left the house and came back and was like, okay, I just took him to a showroom. I'm waiting for them to sell. Obviously I don't have the money yet, but hopefully they'll sell within the next, a couple weeks to a month. And I said, okay, that sounds good. So that was April of 2025. And in May of 2025, we decided that we wanted to build up his credit score so that we could maybe buy a house within the next couple of years. And his credit was basically zero because he had just moved to the States. And so I had a credit card that we had just paid off. It had a zero balance. And so I was like, okay, let's add you on this card. And so we added him, and he had no plans to even really use this card. It was just, for me to use for groceries. We were just really trying to build up his credit. And so I looked at the balance one day and it was super high, and I was so confused. And I started going through the details, and I saw that there was a cash advance for $7,000. And I was like, what is going on? Mind you, I'm not home. I had just finished a showing, so I'm in my car about to head home, and I call him and I'm like, what is this cash advance? And I go, you better tell me the truth immediately. I do not want any bullshit. And he comes out and he tells me, I relapsed again. I've been gambling again. And that was the very first time that I just came out and asked him, and he said yes. And keep in mind, his last relapse was October. This was now June. And so obviously I'm hurt. I'm sad, but I'm also so grateful that he told me the truth. I remember the first thing that came out of my mouth was, thank you so much for telling me the truth, because I just was grateful that he didn't automatically lie about it. So I come home, I'm obviously very upset, but I'm trying to meet him in a peaceful way because he is trying to be honest with me. So I walk into the house and I'm like, tell me everything. And he said, okay, well, I took a salary advance in May and I tried to recoup it. And I actually ended up selling the Rolexes and taking that money and gambling it away. And so I took the money from the cash advance to try to win it back. And I haven't spent it yet. I still have some of that. And you guys, this was such a weird experience because I was so angry and hurt that I was still going through this. But this was the first time that he was being open and honest with me, quote unquote. So I was grateful for that. So I told him, I'm like, okay, well, I just have to ask you a question. Is this because the business account doesn't exist? I just don't understand why you would relapse when this money's coming. He goes, babe, like, you just don't understand gambling. Like, it just, sometimes it happens and there's no rhyme or reason. And so I said, okay, I just need to confirm with you again, is this business account exist? He said 100% it exists. And I'm sorry, I promise you, like, this feels different. Like, just being able to like come forward to you, be honest with you. I feel like I really am changing and I want to be better. And this money is going to hit. We're going to have our dream wedding and everything's going to be okay. And so I believe him and I trust him. And then fast forward to July, I ended up having a bachelorette party for one of my good friends, Tracy. And while I'm at the bachelorette party, I knew the date of the hearing with the Danish IRS for his business account to open up. I knew that was going to be while I was on the bachelorette in the middle of July. And so I remember I was on the bachelorette and I woke up early on the second day I was there because I knew that was the day of the hearing. And I get a text from him and he says, call me when you can. And we will pick up the rest in part 20. And tomorrow is the grand finale. And I hope y'all are ready because it's about to get absolutely insane.